stories of HR.
The stories HR tells itself.
So imagine you buy this really beautiful houseplant, right? You bring it home, you set it by the window, and you just decide, you know what, I'm going to water this plant exactly once a year, and I expect it to just absolutely flourish.
Right, which is, I mean, that sounds entirely absurd.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. You'd never do that to a plant, but that is essentially the exact timeline we use for human feedback in the corporate world.
It really is a phenomenal analogy because it shows the core structural flaw that we're looking at today. Like, we run these incredibly complex organizations, yet we rely on this annual timeline to provide the necessary nutrients for growth, basically.
Yeah, we just starve the system.
Exactly. It starves the system completely.
And that brings us right into today's deep dive. So welcome, everyone, to episode 9 of our Lies of HR series. Today's mission is to dismantle a massive corporate myth, which is the idea that, quote-unquote, reviews measure performance.
Right.
We are taking a hard, analytical look at the performance review. And let's be super candid right at the top here. What we are largely dealing with is an incredibly expensive, highly bureaucratic guessing game that has been dressed up to look like an objective measurement.
Yeah, and we should definitely establish our stance clearly before we get into the mechanics of this. I mean, this is not an HR bashing session.
No, not at all.
The HR professionals who are running these systems are, generally speaking, really trying to be fair. They want to create a structured environment where their people can grow.
Right. They're not the villains here.
No, exactly. Our target today is the broken ritual itself. We are taking aim at the false promise of objectivity that surrounds the entire review process. It's the architecture of the system that fails, not the people administering it.
Yeah. So for everyone listening right now, whether you are a manager who is dreading the paperwork of giving reviews or an employee who gets that awful knot in your stomach waiting to receive one, you know the friction of this ritual.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone feels it.
So our roadmap for this episode is to first deconstruct the specific mechanisms of why the traditional review fails so badly. Then we need to examine this rapidly growing trend of using AI to supposedly fix the bias, which is, spoiler alert, a whole other mess. And finally, we'll outline a really constructive, research-backed framework for how leaders should actually evaluate work.
I think the best place to start, the first failure point to examine, is the psychology of the timeline itself. You mentioned the houseplant analogy, which really highlights the infrequency. But the secondary effect of that infrequency is something cognitive psychologists call recency bias.
Okay, so recency bias, meaning we only remember what literally just happened.
Precisely. Because business moves so rapidly now, I mean, goals that you set 12 months ago usually belong to an era that just no longer exists.
Right.
Project scopes change, the market shifts, but the formal goals remain static in some, HR portal somewhere.
Yeah, just frozen in time.
Right. So when the manager finally sits down to write the review, the human brain relies on the availability heuristic. It reaches for the memories that are just the easiest to retrieve.
Which means that brilliant late-night save you pulled off, like 10 months ago, is effectively erased from the record simply because your manager's brain can't easily access it.
Exactly.
But, a minor stumble last month, maybe a presentation that didn't land perfectly, suddenly that becomes the defining narrative of your entire year.
It looms entirely out of proportion. The brain just prioritizes the fresh data, even if the fresh data is a total anomaly.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate for a second, though.
Yeah.
Don't we ultimately need a finish line to judge the whole race? Like, at some point, an organization has to look back and tally up the total contribution to figure out who's actually, moving the needle.
We do need to evaluate total contribution, yes, but the annual model distorts the race. Think of it like judging a marathon runner exclusively on how they handle the final 100 meters.
Oh, wow.
Right. If a runner keeps a world record pace for 26 miles but trips on a discarded water bottle in the final stretch, the annual review model effectively records their entire performance as clumsy.
That is such a good way to put it. One bad week, or even just an unlucky project right before review season, completely overwrites a year of sustained excellence.
Exactly. The snapshot is mistaken for the whole film.
And if the timeline distorts our memory of the work, the way we are forced to mathematically grade that distorted memory just makes the situation so much worse. I mean, we see this all the time with the concept of forced ranking or the bell curve.
Ah, yes, the forced distribution.
It's awful.
It really is. Someone, somewhere in corporate history, just decided that every single team's performance must fit neatly into a statistical normal distribution. A few stars at the top, a bulky average middle, and a predetermined bottom slice of underperformers.
I mean, it's basically like grading a calculus exam on a curve where every single student studied incredibly hard and scored a 95 or above, but the professor is still mandated to hand out bad marks just to make the math look pretty on a graph.
Exactly that. Companies are rationing their top ratings, and they are literally manufacturing losers to fit a statistical curve.
Manufacturing losers. That is such a brutal phrase, but it's so accurate.
And if we look at the actual science of human performance, that practice is entirely invalid. There is a landmark body of research by Herman Agornis, Ernest O'Boyle, and their colleagues that completely dismantles this bell curve myth in the workplace.
Okay, so what did they find?
Well, they proved that real human performance, especially in complex knowledge work, it just does not follow a normal distribution.
Really? So if it doesn't look like a bell curve, what is the actual shape of human performance?
It follows a power law.
Oh, a power law?
Yeah. In a power law distribution, you have a very small number of exceptional outliers who produce a massive amount of value, followed by a very long, thick tail of genuinely solid, capable contributors.
Okay, so think about, like, software engineering or strategic planning.
Right. One incredible insight or one truly elegant piece of code can be worth 100 times the output of an average day.
So the bell curve assumes there must be this symmetrical fat bottom of complete failures to balance out the stars. But the power law shows that you mostly just have superstars and then a lot of really, really great players.
Yes. So when you force a highly functional team into a mandatory bell curve, you are taking genuinely good contributors and artificially labeling them as inadequate purely to satisfy a mathematically flawed model.
It's statistically wrong.
It is statistically wrong to sort people this way.
And it's incredibly demoralizing to tell someone on a team of high achievers, hey, you did great, but the math says somebody has to be in the bottom 10%, and today that's you. I mean, it breeds a deeply toxic competitive environment.
It does, but organizations cling to it because they're just desperate for objectivity. They want a neat numerical justification for who gets promoted and who gets a bonus.
Right, because they crave the math to shield them from the reality that performance reviews are inherently subjective.
Exactly. Human judgments are soaked in bias. We have affinity bias, where managers naturally and subconsciously rate people higher if they share similar backgrounds or communication styles, or even if they went to the same college.
Right, the whole we both like golf bump.
Exactly. The concept of a perfectly objective evaluation generated by a human being is a total fantasy.
So if human bias and faulty memory are the core bugs in the system, it makes total sense that the current corporate reflex is to reach for data to solve the problem. Which brings us to the cautionary sequel of this whole thing.
Right, the AI era.
Yeah. Right now, in 2025 and 2026, we are seeing this massive accelerating trend where vendors are pitching AI as the ultimate bias killer for performance management.
It is the next cautionary chapter in the story, for sure. The executive suite basically looked at the messy, subjective human reality and thought, well, let's just take the human out of it.
Makes sense on paper, I guess.
Right. But we are now seeing the rollout of software that scores performance hidden in the background. Employees are being graded on new metrics like AI-driven impact, and we even have algorithms drafting the final review documents that managers then just read to their teams.
That's wild. And on the surface, I can kind of see why a stressed executive would buy that software. It feels clean, you know?
Yeah.
It feels like stepping on a scale to get a precise number.
It feels safe.
Yeah. But relying on an algorithm to judge complex human work feels like it would create entirely new blind spots.
Oh, it does. It doesn't fix the problem at all. It just scales the problem. To really understand the danger here, we have to look at Goodhart's law.
Goodhart's law is...
It's a foundational principle in economics that states, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure.
So meaning, the moment I know a specific metric dictates my bonus, my goal shifts from actually doing good work to just maximizing that specific metric.
Exactly. Let's look at the mechanisms of how that actually plays out. Say an AI system is measuring an employee's productivity by tracking their communication volume, right? Like how many emails they send or how quickly they resolve a coding ticket.
Okay.
That is the measure. But the second the employee realizes their livelihood depends on it, they start gaming the system.
Obviously.
Right. They send 10 short, fragmented emails instead of one comprehensive, thoughtful one. Or they write bloated, fast code instead of taking the time to write elegant, sustainable code.
It reminds me of the issues with all that workplace surveillance software. It essentially rewards the performance of looking busy rather than the creation of actual value.
Precisely. Algorithms are built to optimize what is easy to measure: volume, speed, keyboard activity. But they are completely blind to the intangible things that actually keep a company alive.
Right. What kind of intangibles are you thinking of
Yeah.
specifically? Well, judgment, for one. I mean, an algorithm cannot measure the time an experienced employee spent mentoring a junior colleague who was, like, on the verge of quitting.
Oh, that's a great point.
And it entirely misses the quiet save. You know, when an employee spots a tiny systemic error that would have derailed a multi-million-euro client project, and they just quietly fix it behind the scenes before anyone even notices.
Yes. An AI system gives 0 points for a disaster that didn't happen.
Exactly.
That is a crucial insight. AI prioritizes measurable activity over invisible value. And, we also have to navigate the deeply philosophical, muddy waters of AI measuring AI.
Oh, right. Because AI is doing half the work now anyway.
Exactly. As generative tools, co-pilots, and automated research become totally embedded in our daily workflows, we are reaching a point where a significant chunk of the output is machine-generated.
So if an AI writes a report in half the time, is the evaluation software measuring the employee's brilliance, or is it just measuring its own sibling software?
Exactly. The concept of individual output becomes incredibly blurred. And from what I understand of the regulatory landscape, governments are actually starting to recognize how dangerous it is to let algorithms make decisions about people's livelihoods.
Yeah, it's becoming a matter of hard law now. The EU AI Act places AI use for worker evaluation squarely in its high-risk category.
High risk, wow.
Yeah. Using opaque algorithms to determine promotions or terminations demands a level of transparency that most of these tech vendors simply cannot provide.
And beyond the legal risk, there is a fundamental irony in letting software draft a performance review. I mean, think about the root purpose of evaluating work. At its core, a review is supposed to be a moment where a human leader pays actual attention to you and your career path.
Right.
Using an AI to write that review is the literal automation of care. It is a manager implicitly saying, I didn't have the time or energy to pay attention to your work, so I had a machine summarize your worth.
Ouch. Yeah, that is bleak. It is an absolute abdication of leadership. The uncomfortable truth for anyone trying to sell a new HR dashboard is that the answer to a bad human review was never more data. It was always a human who actually pays attention. So we are stuck between two severely broken paradigms. The annual human ritual is deeply flawed by recency bias and forced math, and the AI data-driven fix is just a surveillance trap that games the system.
Right.
What is the actual way forward? If we can't measure people objectively, what does a modern leader actually do?
This is where we need to introduce the core reframe of this deep dive. The ultimate fix to the performance review problem is to fundamentally stop chasing objectivity.
Just completely abandon the idea of an objective measurement entirely.
Yes. We have to accept the reality that performance assessment is an inherently subjective exercise. It is one human being's professional judgment of another human being's work. It always has been.
But if we admit it's subjective, what happens to the massive HR infrastructure built around it? Like, I'm thinking of the multi-page forms, the complex 1 to 5 rating scales, and those exhausting calibration meetings where managers sit in a conference room for 3 hours arguing over whether Sarah is a 3.4 or a 3.6 just to fit the department budget.
All of that bureaucracy, the forms, the decimals, the calibration meetings, it exists for one single purpose: to manufacture the appearance of objectivity around a subjective opinion.
The appearance of objectivity.
Yes. We build this massive administrative fortress to protect ourselves from the discomfort of simply saying to an employee, this is my subjective view of how you are doing. That pretense of math is the root cause of the entire bureaucratic nightmare.
Because no amount of paperwork actually turns an opinion into a scientific fact.
Exactly.
So if we stop faking the math, how do we evaluate people fairly without it turning into just a totally biased free-for-all?
The solution is continuous performance management. It requires making the exact opposite bet of the annual review. You accept that your judgment is subjective, and you neutralize the danger of that subjectivity through high frequency.
Okay, defanging the subjectivity through frequency. Now, that makes a lot of sense when you think about the stakes involved. Like, the annual review is terrifying because it's this rare monolithic event. Your bonus, your promotion, your status for the entire next year rides on a single verdict.
Right, the stakes are massive.
Because the stakes are so big, the system buckles under the pressure to look objective.
But observe what happens when you increase the frequency. If a manager shares their subjective judgment every week or two during a normal one-on-one, the stakes plummet.
Yeah, it's not a huge deal anymore.
Exactly. It is no longer a final verdict handed down from a judge. It is just a single data point in an ongoing dialogue. If a manager's subjective read on a situation is slightly off one week, the employee can easily clarify it, and it's self-corrected by the following week.
It totally transforms the dynamic from a courtroom into an actual conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine that frequent cadence radically changes how employees perceive fairness, too.
It restores real fairness. We've been tricked into thinking fairness means a mathematically perfect score. True fairness is an employee knowing exactly where they stand, in real time, while they still have the agency to act on it.
Oh, that's so true.
The ultimate cruelty of the annual review isn't that a manager has a biased opinion. The cruelty is letting someone struggle for 11 months and then revealing their shortcomings when it's already way too late to save their bonus or their reputation.
Knowing in time to act. That is such a powerful definition of fairness. So let's synthesize all of this into actionable steps for you listening. We've arrived at the 5 moves for the future. A practical framework for organizations to step away from the guessing game and build something that actually works.
Let's do it. So the first move is straightforward but structural. Kill the annual review. A yearly scorecard is a post-mortem. It is not a tool for growth. Transition the organization to continuous feedback. By increasing the frequency of the conversations, you make subjective judgments correctable and lower the anxiety for everyone involved.
Perfect. The second move is a shift in mindset. Coach, don't judge. We need leaders to take off the judge's robe. A performance evaluation should be a transparent, two-way street, not a sentence handed down from above.
Yes.
Managers should be trained to open these conversations with vulnerability, saying plainly, look, this is my subjective human read on the situation. Let's look at the work together and make sure we have a shared understanding.
Exactly. And move number 3 requires dismantling the math. Bin forced ranking. Throw the bell curve out completely. As the research clearly shows, human performance in knowledge work operates on a power law, and it is heavily influenced by the team environment.
So no more manufacturing losers.
Right. Instead of wasting energy artificially sorting people into predetermined buckets of winners and losers, leaders should focus their energy on building the environmental conditions that allow those outliers to naturally excel.
Move number 4 addresses the tech trap. Don't let data become the new tyranny. Metrics and dashboards are highly useful for informing a conversation, but they can never, ever replace the conversation itself.
Beware Goodhart's law.
Exactly. We have to stay hypervigilant against it, knowing that whatever activity we measure will inevitably be gamed. Keep AI strictly in its lane as an analytical tool, and don't let an algorithm draft the actual review.
And the 5th move is perhaps the most difficult for legacy companies to swallow. Separate measurement from money and individual blame. When you rigidly tie a manager's subjective rating directly to an employee's compensation, it breeds fear.
Yeah, and it guarantees great inflation, right? Because managers will start giving everyone high scores simply to protect their team's financial well-being, which makes the data totally useless anyway.
Yes. Furthermore, we must evaluate people contextually. We have to recognize that individual success is deeply entangled with the resources and support of the broader team. You can't just isolate it.
So if we pull back and look at the whole picture we've painted today, from the flawed timeline to the AI surveillance trap to the freedom of continuous feedback, it all coalesces around a single, undeniable truth about human behavior in the workplace.
And that truth is this. People do not grow simply because they were measured. A thermometer has never cured a fever.
Wow, yeah.
Real professional growth happens because someone who intimately understood their work paid attention to them and cared enough to tell them the truth frequently.
The automation of care is the enemy of growth. Well, that brings us to the end of episode 9 of our Lies of HR series. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the performance review. But before you close out, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over on your own. Imagine if your company completely stripped away the infrastructure tomorrow. If the multi-page HR forms, the AI productivity dashboards, and the 1 to 5 rating scale simply vanished, what would your daily, casual communication actually say about how much you value the work of the people around you? Are you already telling your team the truth in real time, or are you secretly waiting for a calendar invite to do the hard work of leadership for you?
That's another comfortable lie, told straight. If you want the next one the moment it's published, sign up at liesofhr.com. Sit with this one, argue with it, and come back for more.
Lies of HR.
The stories HR tells itself.